Thank you for joining this talk today. I'm very happy to tell you about the research that I'm doing, and we'll be more than happy to hear comments and questions then later on. Indeed, I started as a visiting research fellow here last month, and I come from Tampere University. This photo here of this, the title page is from the Russian Pavilion in 2013. Some of the photos, not this one, but will be mine that I used in the presentation. So I will first introduce my research and some of the central concepts to it. After that, I will briefly discuss the 3 case studies in my PhD. So I have article-based PhD, and I'm currently working on the last article of my dissertation. And as an example, I'll focus on the Russian Pavilion at the Venice Biennale. So we'll move on to it later on. How are art and power intertwined? And what role does art play in international relations and world politics? This question is the main research question in my doctoral dissertation. I analyzed the transnational field of art and its relation to the field of power, focusing on art institutions such as the Venice Biennale and fine art museums. And as a methodological approach, I utilized Pierre Bourdieu's theory of social fields. I applied the concept of heteronomy to understand what role art plays in international relations and how different fields interact. And I look into Russian cases that take place beyond Russia's geographical borders. I'm especially interested in the role that Russian elites play in these case studies and how they utilize art institutions in the field of art for their position takings and as part of their capital accumulation strategies. In my talk, I will briefly discuss central concepts and present you then the case of the Russian Pavilion at the Biennale. And as perhaps you may know, the Venice Biennale, it opened last weekend, actually on Saturday. It was open to the wider public. So this makes the talk quite timely in that sense. Here just as an example to clarify the concept of heteronomy, which is central to my research, I'll briefly show you one of the field figures by Pierre Bourdieu. This is the figure of French literary field. So the point is here just to show here on the left and right, you see that the field has 2 different poles, an autonomous pole and a heteronomous pole. And in regard to the field of art, the autonomous pole is where the principle of artistic autonomy prevails, that is, art for art's sake. This pole, or part of the field, is protected from external influence and functions according to its inherent logic. The heteronomous pole, on the other hand, is a part of the field, the principle that interacts with other fields and external forces. And here is where occurs, for example, kind of instrumentalization of art. For example, different dynamics related to art market actors, the commercial sector, the state, cultural diplomacy initiatives. And there is continuous struggle between these 2 poles and principles. Taking actions on the field of art and utilizing it can bring personal benefits, carry diplomatic effects, and even contribute to wider hegemonic shifts in world politics. I argue that the transnational field of art can be closely connected to state power and the wider field of power, and it offers mechanisms for symbolic power to operate. Due to their heteronomous nature, art institutions can provide access to other fields and function as sites through which actors can implement their capital accumulation and conversion strategies and gain better positions on different fields. Heteronomy is thus a crucial concept to make sense of art and power in international relations, as it allows to capture wider dynamics in the world politics beyond just state actors and domestic fields. It shows how different fields and actors are intertwined and how actors move across different fields, taking positions at multiple fields simultaneously. And it also suggests that institutions are not limited to only one field. So a few words about Russian elites. In this slide, which were taken by me in Venice Biennale a few years ago, here you can see the opening of the VAC Foundation's headquarters in Venice. The VAC Foundation is supported by Leonid Michelson, the oligarch behind gas company Novatek. And in the photo on the left side, you can see. You can see here. So thank you. So in the photo on the left side, there you can see there's I captured a glimpse of Michelson next to the now former director of the foundation, Teresa Mavica. Mavica left her position in December. So so indeed, it's a Russian-owned foundation which headquarters of which are based in Venice, one of these capitals of the art world. By applying Pierre Bourdieu's field theory, which can deconstruct complex structures and phenomena by illustrating the interconnectedness of various actors and fields, I analyzed Russian cases in the international transnational field of art, as Russian actors have been an increasingly prominent part of the international art world, illustrated in both public and private projects that cross national borders and engage international professionals. While Russian museums have been internationalizing their activities by opening satellite museums abroad, many oligarchs have also widened their spheres of action and influence to other countries. Many high-profile business tycoons or oligarchs, such as Vladimir Potanin or Leonid Michelson, support Russian art through their art foundations by donating Russian art to the leading European museums and establishing centers of Russian art in Europe's capital cities of art, while other representatives of the oligarchic elite are directly involved with Russia's representation on major international art platforms such as the Venice Biennale. I am interested to study the motivations behind and the nature of such practices. As discovered during my doctoral research, displaying Russian contemporary art within the transnational field or space of art has become a means for the wealthy elite to gain legitimacy and secure capital of credit in the kleptocratic conditions of contemporary Russia. Curiously, some of these business tycoons have also been linked to Russia's activities in the eastern Ukraine and annexation of Crimea. In my PhD, I discussed the role of art in international relations through the examples of international border-crossing art institutions, such as satellite museums and the Venice Biennale. And in this slide, you can see listed the 3 articles of my article-based dissertation. And as I mentioned, I'm currently working on the last third one of the articles. The 2 previous ones have been published already. And while in this talk I focus on the Biennale, I shall say also a few words about the museums as institutions that are worth critical examination due to their role in international relations. Art museums are not neutral institutions, but, quoting Christine Sylvester's notion, they are heavily political, often involved with or implicated in international relations and savvy about power. Museums, indeed, are spaces of power, and power is reproduced in museums. Museums are embedded with symbolic power, acting as instruments to construct and support cognitive structures and shape values. They are inherently linked with state power in the field of power, supporting national narratives. Thus, when National Art Museum established satellite museums abroad, their world-making capabilities reach new audiences that extend well beyond domestic fields. Moreover, these institutions bring together actors with different interests. Art museums perform a role in both national and international elites' power plays. Satellite museums don't only support the state and its diplomatic and foreign policy agendas, but also corporate sponsors have the potential to build bridges and to develop relationships with actors from foreign markets, as my corporate sponsor interviewees have told me during my research interviews. By accumulating cultural capital through economic capital, business actors can enter new social circles and reach new clients, thus converting cultural capital forward to social and additional economic capital. Corporate sponsors and wealthy business people may also support art projects abroad to gain credit, so-called symbolic capital, and secure their positions on the national field of power. Also, the concept of art washing is central here. I could discuss this topic more, but let's have a look at the Venice Biennale. So, the Biennale. In a similar vein to art museums, the biannual contemporary event Venice Biennale brings together elites from different fields, as the Biennale functions as a space and mechanism for position takings and capital accumulation strategies. The prestigious Venice Biennale is a strong mechanism of symbolic capital in the art world. It connects multiple social fields, such as the field of the state, commerce, media, offering a space for social alchemy, that is, conversion of capital, to occur. It plays an important role in the dynamics of the so-called art world, and it produces symbolic capital that affects also the value of art presented at the Biennale. The Venice Biennale is seemingly disinterested in commercial value, imitating autonomy from the market, but, quoting Olaf Bertus, its official status as a non-selling event is exactly what makes its quality signals influential in the art market. For many artists, curators, and commissioners, working at the Venice Biennale is a badge of honor and something that they aspire in their careers. The Venice Biennale is a space of national tensions, cultural dominance, and forms of resistances, as it offers sites for value production of different kinds. It revolves around nations and national imaginaries, and it is often referred to as the Olympic Games of the art world, being established in 1895, 1 year before the modern Olympic Games. National pavilions, they are competing for awards, the most prestigious of which is the Golden Lion Award for the best national pavilion. The Biennale has served as an example to many art biennials around the world, having resulted in the phenomenon of biennialization, as more and more cities have decided to establish a biennial of their own. However, it has also spurred criticism against the Westphalian imaginary, producing biennials of resistance, which are not organized according to the principle of national pavilions. And despite this proliferation of biennials across the globe, the Venice Biennale has a long history, and it carries an aura of prestige, being still one of the most important, if not the most significant art biennial in the world. Already since the 19th century, it has attracted different elites, such as European aristocrats, and today the guests of the Biennale consist of tourists, art world actors, diplomats, journalists, celebrities, business people, which highlights that the Biennale is a heteronomous space that is not reduced to only one social field. This makes it a powerful site of capital accumulation and conversion dynamics. And initially, my interest towards the Russian Pavilion was evoked by its commissioner, who is pictured in the picture here. Throughout the history, the commissioner of the Russian Pavilion, the commissioners have been mainly government officials or representatives of state museums. However, in 2010, the Ministry of Culture appointed Stella Kesaeva, the president of a private art foundation, as the commissioner of the Russian Pavilion, not for one, but for 3 consecutive biennials in 2011, 2013, and 2015. This was a novel act in the history of the Russian Pavilion, and this powerful gesture, it evoked questions. And especially in the beginning, Kesaeva was often described or even belittled, in the media, being defined as an oligarchette or a billionaire's wife. The funding of the pavilion came partly from the Russian state and partly, or mostly actually, from Kesaeva's husband, Igor Kesaev, a billionaire and a tobacco tycoon who has accumulated his wealth through tobacco distribution, retail, and real estate. And the pavilion for the 3 biennales in a row, or 3 Russian pavilions in a row, was dedicated to exhibit Moscow conceptualism, which is an art movement that also Stella Kesaeva's art foundation, Stella Art Foundation, has been supporting. And here you can see listed briefly the pavilions. And in our article, we did also pay attention to what was exhibited in the pavilion, where did these artists and curators situate on these social fields. It's just a curious moment. It's interesting that pay attention that they had actually a German curator, Udo Kittelmann, in 2013, who helped to build the exhibition according to so-called Western taste in contemporary art. They pay also attention to the first ever female pavilion in the history of the Russian pavilion. So both the artist, curator, and the commissioner were all females. And Here I'm referring to our article, which is I have it's the details you can find up there in the upper part of the slide. In our article, we looked into the Commissioner as an entry point of our analysis. We paid attention to parties, exhibitions at the Russian Pavilion, and protests. Stella Kesaeva's transformation from an art collector to the Commissioner of the Russian Pavilion highlights the productive potential of the Venice Biennale in this transformation, claiming to act as a representative of Russia in organizing exclusive cocktail parties with VIP guests played a special role. Since the Biennale's early years, various kinds of elite actors, from aristocrats, celebrities, and politicians across different nations have been attending the Biennale. And these parties, they bring different fields together, allowing representatives of different elites to network and mingle, because it also requires a certain set of capital to actually be invited and to enter these social fields. And while you're in, it allows you to accumulate more and more capital. So this is where exactly at these parties, capital accumulation and conversion takes place as actors utilize, accumulate, and convert different forms of capital. And here is a field figure that we compiled for this our article that I'm basing my talk on. In our article, we looked into before being appointed as the commissioner of the pavilion, Stella Kesaeva, she organized official collateral events, art exhibitions, as part of the Biennale's program in 2007 and 2009. And these parties had visibility in the media due to the celebrities on the guest list, such as the Naomi Campbell, who we also situate in this field figure. While there were no influential political figures attending Kesaeva's vernissage, the opening in 2007, and she remained distant to the Russia's Ministry of Culture in 2009, that had changed. In relation to her exhibition, That Obscure Object of Art, Kesaeva emphasized publicly to be a representative of Russia, which brought her closer to the bureaucratic field, making her acquire recognition from the state. The then Russian Minister of Culture, Alexander Avdeyev, opened her exhibition. Kesaeva was also seated at the opening dinner next to Avdeyev. Furthermore, the famous conductor and general director of Mariinsky Theatre, Valery Gergiev, performed at Kesaeva's collateral event opening party, which was a powerful gesture, highlighting Kesaeva's relationship and connection to the state. Gergiev, he has worked closely with the Russian Ministry of Defense, being even granted the Ministry of Defense Arts and Culture Award for his role in the promotion of culture and patriotism. And it was, if you remember this incident from 2016, it was Gergiev who performed with the Mariinsky Orchestra in Palmyra, Syria, after the city was freed up from the ISIS fighters. So it is through those parties and position taking, Stella Kesaeva converted economic capital to social capital, and further to symbolic capital and capital of credit. And this frees her position in relation to the field of bureaucracy and the field of power. And Kesaeva's economic capital, as well as her social capital, made it possible to work with renowned art curators who are recognized, that is, possess symbolic capital on the transnational field of art. She could convert economic capital, social capital, to symbolic capital, especially to capital of credit and appreciation. And moreover, Kesaeva's pavilion was able to convert critique of the state to its benefit. So in 2013, the exhibition by artist Vadim Zakharov and curator Uda Kittelman, their exhibition in the Russian Pavilion was perceived to criticize the Russian state. And it became a great success among the visitors of the Biennale, drawing a lot of attention and interest. And in a paradoxical way, this critique of the state ended up benefiting the Russian Pavilion on the transnational field of art, as critics were praising it. And another example of such paradoxical capital accumulation occurred in the pavilion in 2015, when an international group of artists occupied the Russian pavilion wearing military jackets with the text #on vacation on their backs to protest the Russian annexation of Crimea. And here on the right, you can see a picture from this protest in the pavilion. And during an interview at Stellar Foundation, the interviewee who represented the Stellar Foundation, told me that the organizers of the Russian Pavilion were able to use this artistic protest for their for their purposes, for the pavilion's purposes, adding another layer of meanings to the Russian Pavilion. Thus, an initially subversive performance was seen to serve the goals of the Russian National Pavilion. Having people in military uniforms in the Russian Pavilion brings us also close to the main funder of the pavilion, Igor Kisaev. Strategic giving is a central concept describing also Igor Kisaev's capital conversion strategies. Kisaev is not only known for his art world activities, but also for his links to the Russian power elite and siloviki, which is translated as the forcemen, indicating the officers of Russia's law enforcement agencies, such as military and security personnel. Igor Kisaev, he owns a Degtyaryov arms factory in Russia, which has been accused to have supplied weapons to the separatists in eastern Ukraine. And Kisaev also supports Monolith Fund, a charity which is run by former officers of the FSB, National Nation Security Services, which provides financial care, assistance, and housing for retired military and security personnel. These gestures have the potential to serve as resources of symbolic capital, having helped to develop good relations with the siloviki that function perhaps as a krisha, which means roof in Russian, a protection bracket, which is an important instrument when doing business in Russia. And considering the extreme inequality in Russia, the billionaires can legitimize their wealth by expressing loyalty to the Russian state and by serving national interests. Similarly, by providing a generous support to the Russian Pavilion, Kisaev was able to convert his economic capital to symbolic capital, and in particular to the capital of credit. Russian Pavilion and contemporary art, which both exceed the national borders of Russia, function as mechanisms for the elite to legitimize themselves and appear loyal to the Russian nation and thus the state. This further secured their positions on the field of power. Considering Kisaev's activities in tobacco business, supporting contemporary art may have also functioned as art washing, being able to clean his reputation and accumulate symbolic capital also in fields not limited to domestic realms. For many wealthy Russian elites, internationally manifesting art washing practices, such as support of art exhibitions, the practices of gifting artworks to museums, or memberships at art museums boards, have helped elites to take and secure positions on the transnational field of art and make connections with actors within that sphere. Arguably, this has also had an effect on their positions on the field of power. So what is happening with the Russian Pavilion now in 2022? What can we say about the relation of art and power? As I mentioned in the beginning of my talk, the opening of the Venice Biennale took place on the weekend, on Saturday, and the glamorous, exclusive reopening days were organized from Wednesday until Friday. However, this year, the doors of the Russian Pavilion remained closed as the curator and artist of the pavilion resigned in February once the war in Ukraine began. And the Biennale announced in March that it, quote, does not accept the presence at any of its events of official delegation, institutions, or persons tied in any capacity to the Russian government. In 2019, the Russian Pavilion's strategic management for the next 10 years was given into the hands of an art consulting company called Smart Art, which is run by Ekaterina Vinokurova and Anastasia Kornieva, former employees of the auction house Christie's. Their role became divided in the following manner. Vinokurova became responsible for the Smart Art consultancy, while Kornieva took the role of the pavilion's commissioner. Despite their experience at Christie's, these actors, they do not solely represent the international art market. So to follow up about the Smart Art consultancy and the management of the Russian Pavilion, so these Vinokurova and Kornieva, their family ties situate them very close to the Russian state. Vinokurova's father is Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, and Kornieva is the daughter of Rostech's deputy CEO, Nikolai Laguev, who has a decades-long background of working in the KGB and FSB. Rostech is a Russian state-owned defense conglomerate that is involved in, for example, manufacture of weapons. The pavilion will be funded by VS's Leonid Mikhelsen, who is one of the richest people in Russia, the man behind gas company Novatek, whom I mentioned earlier. And the Russian Pavilion thus remains to be curiously intertwined with private capital and the wider field of power. And so, with my talk, I wanted to highlight the necessity to take a critical look at actors that different institutions, here through the example of art institutions, engage. But I, of course, encourage to think about institutions in a wider sense to look at the different actors. And art institutions, they are not neutral. Additionally, I wanted to express the importance to avoid reductionist approaches, and I wanted to encourage to do research on heteronomous sites by presenting how heteronomy can help to detect wider dynamics that would have otherwise left unnoticed. And here's a photo of the empty pavilion, Russian Pavilion in Venice, that was taken on Thursday during the Biennale's reopening days. Thank you. Now I'm more than happy to hear your comments and questions, and hopefully we'll have a lovely discussion.
Thank you very much. It's a very interesting presentation, Julia. So I will let Stephanie.
Okay. So thank you very much, Julia, for this very interesting presentation, and also I really enjoyed reading the article that was sent to me for the presentation. Maybe just a few words about also what is my position and where my comments come from. So I'm a historian, so I'm not exactly in international relations, but what was very interesting for me is the lot of similarities that I can see with between your work and my research project on the Swiss art societies. So we look at these Swiss art societies from a historical perspective, from the end of the 19th century until today. And Emily Widmer, who is here, is also a PhD student on this topic. And there were a lot of very interesting parallels. So, of course, our topic is much more at the local level. But anyway, as I said, very similar dynamics. I think you show very well how the concept of heteronomy is really a very stimulating framework for analyzing the Biennale of Venice, and how it allows to highlight the interconnectedness of different fields involved in this art exhibition. And we see exactly the same at the local level, actually. So I really enjoyed that. I think it's a very stimulating framework of analysis. Also, how the fields could be used as a space of competition also. And another idea that I didn't really think about before reading your paper, but which I found also very stimulating, is this idea of conversion of capital. And I think this is another thing which is very well demonstrated in your paper, how the Biennale, for example, can be a space for conversion of capital. This was very, very interesting, and I will clearly try to think about this when I do further research, my own research project, program. And of course, finally, the apparent non-commercial or non-financial dimension of the event, but of course, which is only something apparent. And in the end, you show also well how it can play an important role in increasing the value of art. What I found also very interesting is the major role of economic elites, because of, we see exactly the same in the local art societies in Switzerland. In particular, since the 20s, we see how financial elites, so in your case, it's what you quote an author talking about prominent oligarchs. And in our case, we see that since the 20s, the director of the main Swiss banks, notably, really play a major role in these art societies and start to fight actually with the artists. And we really see how there is some tensions, very strong tensions actually, to influence the way the art society will function, how you can decide what will be the cultural dimension of this society. So how this different category of actors can be also in competition in this situation. I think it's really interesting. So maybe now I would like to have more information on some issues. So I will ask a few questions, and maybe I will finish by drawing a similarity with Franz Schultheiss' work. I don't know if you know him, but okay, I think it could be useful because we discussed it with Emily this morning, and we saw some very interesting parallel between your work and what he's doing for Art Basel, actually. So I will give some examples. So maybe what I was a little bit missing, but it's because I'm a historian, so I'm really, of course, interested by a historical perspective and also more contextual analysis. I wanted to know a little bit more about both political but also historical context for your work. So it comes in the paper, but maybe it could be useful to, I don't know if you have the introduction of the article in the final thesis to start to draw a little bit the general context. So my first question was, maybe can you say a little bit more about the position of Russian art at that time of the exhibition on the international art market? Because I don't really know anything about this, so I would be interested to have more information on that topic. And also, so you mentioned the different sanctions that were taken against some actors. For example, Igor Kezaev, sorry, I didn't remember how you should pronounce it correctly, but so Stella's husband, who had been added to the list of Russian citizens under sanction, notably after the illegal annexation of Crimea. So my question would be, how is everything that you described specifically connected to that context, to that very close context of the annexion of Crimea, or how is it maybe some older dynamics? Since when did it start? How can you extend your observation to a longer period? And I don't know, is it since Putin getting power, or is it older dynamics? I would like to know a little bit more about that issues. Also, regarding general questions, you mentioned you don't use it that much in the paper, but you did more in the oral presentation, the concept of elite. So I would be interested to know what is your definition of elite. Is it a positional definition, reputational definition? In our project, we use really a positional definition. So all the people that have a power of position, a position of power, of decision in the different fields of power. So I would be interested to know if you have the same definition or maybe another definition. That would be my second question. I was also very interested, but at the same time a little bit frustrated about the concept of gender capital. I would like to know a little bit more about it, because I don't know the article you are quoting in your paper, and it sounded very interesting. But maybe can you define a little bit more specifically what is exactly the uniquely feminine forms of capital? How can you use more precisely this concept in your article? But anyway, I think also the dimension of the marriage and how gender capital can notably be realized through marriage is very interesting, and it's also a way sometimes to get to highlight a little bit more the role, the invisible role of a woman, especially for the historical period. It's probably less useful for the contemporary period, but we tried also to reintegrate women with the role of marriage, because they are usually not getting the power positions, but then you can see clearly the important role that they play as wives, totally. And then when it comes to cultural capital, I was wondering if you could add something. Well, the paper has been published already, but maybe for the conclusion, or if you could add something about taste and how taste is a social construction as well. And it appeared actually in your oral presentation, but I think it could be also addressed in the paper, because it's a very interesting part of the cultural capital, and how also you can apparently disconnect taste between the economic value of a piece of art. So yeah, I think it would be very interesting to discuss a little bit more, to reintegrate on a theoretical perspective the construction of taste, but also how then you show it clearly with the empirical analysis, the role it plays in your specific case studies. I was also very interested by the way you...
Let me speak for you.
It's very eager. I was also very interested by the way you mobilize the concept of national capital, and how Russian actors rely on national capital, but also seek to improve their position in the transnational field of art by devaluating their national capital, but then also re-territorializing. It's very difficult work. And I was wondering if the concept of cosmopolitan capital wouldn't be also a useful concept for your paper, because of course you work on a transnational field of art. So I guess that discussing the relation between national capital but also cosmopolitan capital could be interesting as an additional concept to mobilize. And then, and I will finish with this, so that's also the time for your answer and the more general discussion. So I guess that the work by Franz Schultheis, as I mentioned before, would be really interesting for you, because he also used a Bourdieusian approach to analyze notably Art Basel, and there are really a lot of similarities between what you do in your paper and what he does in his paper. And one of the interesting analysis he did, at least to my opinion, he showed how since the end of the 20th century, what he calls new money in the financial sphere of the Western world has increasingly invested in the buying of artworks for three main reasons. The first one is for speculative investment, which is again the invisible part of the story, but which is clearly an important part of the story. For the love of art, of course, apparent, or not, but anyway, it's an important part. And also as a social distinction, of course. So again, there are a lot of similarities, I think, with what you show. So it relates also to my question, which would be, since how long you can observe what you said for the Russian case, and what could be maybe the difference between the Russian case and the Western world, which has been described by Schultheis. I would be interested to know a little bit more, if it's possible, because if you didn't read the paper, maybe it doesn't make sense. But anyway, if you have some ideas, I would be interested to know a little bit more about the specificity of the Russian case, which I don't know at all. So yeah, I guess maybe I end with this. Is it okay? Okay. Thank you again for your presentation.
Thanks a lot. And Julia, it's great if you respond, but maybe you can pick and choose so that we still have some time for the Q&A session. But yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, indeed. Many very good, thought-provoking and excellent questions. Which ones to choose? Well, I do like your definition of elites, because from Bourdieusian sense, for example, being high in economic capital, that is not enough to be, being part of the elite. So I agree with your definition of elite, that it's related to positions. So because different fields have different types of capital. So not only economic. About Russian art, the art market, yes. So that could be something. Well, briefly, before 2014, the art market in Russian art in the kind of transnational space of art, it was much more vibrant area. So than it is nowadays. So, for example, in London, they have these. Is it every year or every second year? This Russian Art Week, where big auction houses are selling their Russian art for huge worth. But this year it has been cancelled, and but thanks to the kind of increase of Russian wealthy Russians, and that is also the reason why they're also, you could see this in Russian art, that people were supporting Russian art, collecting Russian art. I think it's a good point about this taste and culture capital, and I think that I'll have to look into that in my PhD. But cosmopolitan capital, well, this is actually also something that when you're doing, in particular about Russian cases, that there used to be this term that people were using a lot around 2011, 2010, global Russians. Curiously, nowadays almost no one is using that term anymore. So through this, this cosmopolitan capital, that is something that could be interesting to use as a sort of analysis. It's thought provoking. It made me think about this global Russians term that suddenly disappears in the last 10 years for many reasons that relate to annexation of Crimea and events in Ukraine, elsewhere than Crimea. So okay.
Great. I think it was a superb discussion with lots of interaction. So thank you, Julia, for your great presentation and for triggering this. Thanks also to Stephanie for the excellent points of discussion, and thanks everyone for your attendance. I would like to flag out that on Thursday we have yet another event from the Global Governance Center on global governance and cities. This will be by Jane Niemann, who is a professor in international law here at the Institute, and she convened a panel of scholars and policy practitioners to discuss the new book, which she actually co-edited on that theme. So looking forward to seeing you there too. Thanks.
Thank you.